Welcome to Secrets to Win Big with Arjun Sen. Today, it's my pleasure to share a fascinating conversation with William Espey, a man who lives branding with a purpose, but more importantly, an amazing friend and a great human being. As I reflect on our conversation and who William is, I realized at the core of branding is authenticity. Branding truly is the pursuit of authenticity. It's not packaging, it's not a slogan, it's not campaigns, it's about the truth. The truth of what the experience as a guest will feel is the truth, is the authenticity. The truth of the expectations the brand sets, very important. Expectations are not set in thin air. Expectations are not set with overpromise. It's are set in truth because the reality will be when the guest comes to discover the brand. And that's one of the things this conversation with William helped me realize over and over again is building a long-term relationship starts with truth, and in the branding world, that is authenticity. So as you listen to this conversation, I really would ask you a very simple question. Do you trust your own brand? Will you walk in blindly? Will you recommend your best friend or family member from the heart? When that happens, that means the brand is authentic. Here's the conversation. William Espey is the creative visionary behind Chipotle's iconic brand voice. A multi award winning thought leader, he now helps companies across industries build authentic brands rooted in values, culture, and meaningful customer connection. I've been very fortunate to watch William's approach to brand development from close, where he defied conventional marketing norms. Instead of relying on formula corporate driven strategies, he cultivated Chipotle's authentic brand voice through a deeply personal and value driven approach, which resonated with both customers and team members. Welcome to Secrets to Win Big, William Espey. I want to start with a very rapid fire, big picture questions. I want to put in front of you a few sentences and please complete these with 3 or 4 words at most. First, branding to me is
A pursuit of authenticity.
okay, break it down for me a little bit. What is pursuit and what is authenticity? Why
Well, I think
pursuit?
the branding, well, beyond the, putting a veneer or creating a package for a product or a package meaning, this whole universe you put around a product or a service, that kind of branding. When I look at branding and looking as a pursuit to authenticity, this is an exploration of an organization going deep to understand what they really stand for. And that's, something that I preach on a lot is the idea of finding that core truth of what they, what's that overarching thing that they live under. And within that, what is their vision based on that truth? And then their mission to see that vision come to life. And then ultimately what creates a position. So they understand how they're talking to the world around them. But for me, that this boils down to what their values are as an organization. So to create an authentic brand, they need to understand what their true values are, not the ones they pretend to, the ones that they put on a poster in their break room or whatever, but the ones based on what they actually do every day, whether that's if they're uncomfortable with that or not. But this is what we do, and this is why we're here and why we're trying to execute it. That demonstrates their true values, and those values, what ends up happening is creating a culture around it, because like-minded people gravitate towards those values when they really start living it, and like-minded people are there, and it builds out a culture. And then the brand ideally is simply a manifestation, an external manifestation of that culture. That's what I see as being authenticity. And it requires that really introspective process for an organization to understand what are we really about here and why. And it might be just like, we're here to make a lot of money. Great. Well, then admit it,
Mhm.
and you'll find people who are like-minded and they'll all want to go there and make a lot of money. But that's your values, whatever. But other organizations are trying to maybe do something beyond just selling a product, do something beyond that in order to affect the world around them in a positive way according to their vision. And I think that's the key to this. That's what the pursuit is. It's that introspection in order to land at something that's truly authentic for what they're trying to accomplish.
I love that. And a few things that hit me is the moment you use the word poster, a smirk came on my face. Okay. If I stand in front of the poster or covered the poster, so many brands cannot tell me without the poster or without a cheat sheet what the values are. So
Yeah.
think as human beings, if I needed a cheat sheet to tell me who Arjun's values are, I'm not living that. Okay.
Yeah.
And second, what I learned as you were talking about was very simply, I started realizing if you know the values, living the values, it will come across. You don't have to go and tell, but the truth that you talked about is if I want to make money, let's say I'm all about making money. Okay. Like today, William Espey, Arjun are meeting together to make $500 or $2 billion. Like, let's say that very clearly instead of hiding it. So I want to go from there to the next one. Customers to me are, finish, please.
Customers to me are they are guests on that journey. So that's, I think, an important aspect of it is not to look at them as customers or consumers or that they're that, but that you are inviting them along to be part of that process, that discovery and that expression of authenticity. So customers are guests on that journey because that is sort of why you're doing what you're doing in order to expand that idea and offer this thing, whatever that may be, to the world. And
Mhm,
really, I think inviting them along is and then seeing them as guests, because then you also treat them with a certain elevation when you see them as a guest, no matter what it is you're selling. But
mhm.
then it's like, oh, I really want them to have a great experience, whatever that may be. And so having that, I think that mindset of a guest, I think really helps to manifest an experience that's really positive for them and a benefit for them for whatever it is that you're offering. That I think is the best way to approach that, because then you're always treating them with, I think, a little uh, you're not taking them for granted. You never take a guest for granted. And I think that's an important aspect of that.
The moment you use the word guest, it really tells me, imagine, William, you and your family are a guest in my house. Then my wife Chitra and my role that day is, what can we do for you today? Instead of taking you guys for granted and say, hey, William, do you want to buy this book? Do you want, like, to me, many a time, what we do is we forget they're a guest and we forget about the present and the now. We forget about how to go into your wallet tomorrow. Like, think, before you leave, I give you a coupon. Okay. Like, somehow, somewhere, that whole guest part, the moment a guest becomes a transactional guest, the heart gets missing. And I love that word.
Yeah.
So then I want to get into team members. I want to know, very curious, like you talked about pursuit, you talked about guest, how in that context you put team members to me are.
Well, team members to me are partners in that journey. So we have guests that we're serving as our customers, but the team members are our partners, and they need to be connected to the brand in a meaningful way, connected to the organization in a meaningful way. So they feel that they have either both an a, emotional investment in what's going on. So, and that's where it gets back to those, core values. Developing a culture is when you're sort of expressing those core values in a way that's meaningful, and it resonates with the team members or new team members, or maybe it doesn't resonate and someone decides, I don't want to be part of this, and they leave. But that's the best way to sort of build and distill out a team that's really committed to the same core values and the vision and the mission that you're involved in. That, I think, seeing them as partners in it is essential. And this is something that, just, I guess there was an article this last week about the CEO of AT&T saying loyalty's dead. I don't care if you're loyal. You just come here and work, kind of thing. It's like, wow, okay, well at least you're being honest. But
Yeah.
but I think expecting loyalty out of our teams requires that they feel engaged and connected in a way that's very meaningful and that they see themselves as partners. And I think there's a tremendous value in having people also see themselves as partners because they're really going to give that sort of extra effort, that loving effort to what you're trying to accomplish for your guests, for your customers. I think that's essential, but they need to be in turn, the organization needs to compensate them and reward them in a way that they feel valued and they see the well, yeah, I guess the value for them moving forward financially, and that they are treated as a partner rather than just an employee.
I'm going to digress. There's a word you said that hit a nerve. Okay. The word loyalty. I've never used the word loyalty with my wife. Never used the word loyalty with my daughter. Okay. And secondly, if I'm expecting loyalty from my wife, I need to be loyal back. Okay.
Yes.
So how can, like when we use this word loyalty, how can I expect my team members to be loyal? Where, in organizations, every month we look at, can we run this organization without 10% of people, without 12% of people? Okay. Same with guests. We are after the wallet and not the heart. So how does this word loyalty fit in this whole world where it seems like a word of convenience to help organizations make more money and save cost?
Well, I think that's the thing when it's like it's tangible ownership into what's going to move forward. So I spoke at an event last year for the Association of Employee Stock Owner Plans. And it was a fascinating opportunity to enter into that world where companies, this organization, what it does is it helps companies rather than go public, sort of sell themselves to their employees. So this is great for like small and medium-sized businesses that have built out by a founder who wants to continue their legacy of their company without going the IPO route. And so it gives them money in the beginning, and then it allows their employees to actually own what they've built. And that's like the sort of the extreme example, but it's beautiful because here these people have helped build your organization, and now they actually have the tangible skin in the game. Now, in larger organizations, I think it's a matter of actually giving equity in a tangible way to demonstrate your loyalty. I believe in you, and I'm because options, the whole stock option game is just that arbitrage between when you got the option and hopefully there's a gap, you're going to make a little money, but that's not real equity. That's just that gap, and whether or not you reinvest that is up to you. And so you weren't given the equity; you were given some cash that maybe that you can then decide whether or not you turn into equity there or someplace else. So that's not that's like a shell game, I think, with employees to feel like that they're going to get something out of it. The options thing is not real tangible equity. So I think if organizations want to demonstrate their loyalty, they need to, I think, first of all, really create a sense of equity, or that they can build into that. But then also, I think developing their people and investing them to make them better, smarter, better at what they do, even knowing that might move them on to someplace else. But you show that, I think, that kind of dedication to your employees, that you're willing to invest in them, you're willing to build them up as people and professionally, shows how much loyalty you have as an organization for them, and they will pay it back in kind. Ideally, if you're living those values, you all agree on that, they feel they have someplace to go and grow. I think that's a very important aspect, so that it becomes that mutual exchange of loyalty between the two.
I love that. And the thing that you hit there was the genuine investment. Investment means I'm giving you. Like I was working with a brand and I was literally blown away by the simple things that they do. They're a tiny brand, they're evolving. If you want to take any class They pay for it. They are even giving you fee-free subscription to Babbel or anything like that for you to learn a new language because they feel that could help you. Okay? And that itself, and the very fact 60 or 70% of team members are using that, like that itself is the proof that if I give gifts and nobody's using, the very fact that percentage of people are using, like what does a new language have to do? Has to be something that team members liking it. And I love that. So next, let's go to when you were in Chipotle or when you were working with any brands now more from outside than in, what's the one thing that keeps you up at night?
Uh, yeah, the one thing that while working with other brands, the things that keeps, I guess that's that having people seeing the value, organizations and brands seeing the value of investing in that process of authenticity. That it is so tempting, to take the shortcut. You look at this at that grid in economics where you look at like I cheat, you cheat, I don't cheat, you don't do, and the maximum utility is if we all play by the same rules, but the temptation is to cheat. Um, and so I think that the temptation is so high to take the shortcut, to take the short route, because our society, the U.S. economy, capitalism is built on that idea of like make as much money as possible as quickly as possible. Like it's the whole IPO versus the ESOP route that I mentioned. The Chipotle, for example, um, they did the IPO in 2006 and made a ton of money, but it was an uncontrolled IPO, meaning that no one had more than 51% of this. It had already been sold out, if you will. And which was okay as long as that there was positive continuous growth, which Chipotle managed up until 2015 when the E. coli incident happened. And at that point, because it was uncontrolled, there was a complete, as you know, rebooting of management, brand new executive team. The founder essentially got fired from his own company because it was uncontrolled. Because as soon as you go into the marketplace as an IPO, your number one priority is shareholder value. No matter what you espouse as your values or your mission and all that hippie stuff that I talk about is meaningless as soon as you've gone public because you're beholding to shareholders before anything else by law. So I think that's the thing that keeps me up is just having companies think about, well, how do we, how much is enough for me personally? I'm making money, I'm the executive, and I want to make lots of money. How much is enough? And am I willing to have just a little bit less, but create something that's more of a legacy for the brand as opposed to maximizing the stock offering kind of thing? I think that's the thing is trying to find that balance and the motivation that people would have to do, quote unquote, do the right thing instead of go for the profit and the shortcut.
I think, this really takes me to my next question is in a world where most of us like to talk big, okay, whether it is politics, corporate world, it's just like the bigger promise that gets us through to the point where I'm also learning more and more that marketing is not branding. Operations is branding. If we were both working at Chipotle, what you feel both with the food and also by partnering with Chipotle by buying a burrito is the brand because that's the moment of truth.
Exactly.
So
100%.
how do you help brands see that it is not words, but deliver, connect, stay connected at the highest level? How do you do that?
Well, that and again, that's I think I spoke to that previously of the idea of values beget culture and culture begets brand, and that was an epiphany I had at Chipotle because in my early years, I was the internal creative there, and I was doing all the ads and a lot of the collateral, all the collateral, and the in store signage and all that, and I thought I was really important. I thought I was the bee's knees and what I was doing was super special. And that I was the brand. And then I sort of had this moment when I started really looking with empathy towards the customer's experience and how they were going through what they saw of the work. And here's an ad out on an outdoor board, and how are they interacting with that? But then when I really boiled it down, it was like, well, it's when they come in the restaurant and they open the door and it smells great and the music's at the right level and the architecture is kind of moving them in a way magically around that they don't really have to think about. It just takes them where they need to this line, and they get to the line and it's clean and the food looks delicious and this person is interacting with them in a really positive way and smiling and friendly, and they build that burrito and they're building up that anticipation. That's when I had the epiphany of like, well, that is where the brand experience is. That is what the customer is going to take away. That the best ad in the world will never make up for a crappy in-restaurant experience. It'll never fix that. And a great and a dumb ad, a bad ad, will be forgotten anyway. And so that it really doesn't. I realized at that moment that I really didn't matter. That really what mattered is, how do we build a culture where the people working in the restaurants are connected to what was going on there. They were making sure it looked great because they felt pride and ownership and loyalty. And then they were interacting with the customer with that same kind of thing. And that is where the 95% of that brand impression in the guest's mind is happening. And so it's helping, I think, organizations realize that get into the customer's point of view, have empathy for their experience, really pare it down. Because we as marketers, especially on the executive level, make a lot of assumptions about what our customers are thinking or what they understand. It's like, no, strip that all down and really look at that raw experience someone has as they're interacting with your product or your service or your messaging or whatever that may be, and look at it very cleanly. It's like, are they going to understand? And is this a benefit for them? And how is the product packaged in a way that's going to make it a good experience? And all of this stuff, so you really get into their moment as they're going through the brand to understand what those key moments are for them. And one might pop out to you saying, oh, this is really where it's happening. That, the advertising, it's good. We're driving, frequency and reach. We're driving people to the moment. But here in our process of our product, here is the real moment. And then that's when you say, okay, how do we make that moment really shine? But I think it's getting into the customer's experience through empathy is how you're going to find that. It's not going to come from an internal focus group of executives deciding what's right. It's really taking yourself out of it and touching on that emotional experience for the guest.
So now I'm going to move to personal branding. But before I go there, I'm going to embarrass you. And this is a forewarning. When I was teaching at University of Colorado at CU as an adjunct faculty, you came to talk to my class nearly every semester.
And I got you in trouble for swearing.
So that was a good problem. Okay. But after all these years, when I stay in touch with some of my students and they have all evolved to amazing moments and we reflect, what is sad is they don't remember a single thing I ever talked to them in class. But they remember a William Espey came and talked to them from their heart. They remember there was a very cool PowerPoint and you showed them PowerPoint, or those, you didn't use PowerPoint Keynote, which is the world's worst invention. You can use to serve you instead of being served, and read from that. But the thing that recently a student of mine told me, that what I learned was, being in marketing, you don't have to sell your soul. You can be who you are. And the very fact, William, I feel in our life as we are getting older, if you can give one person a wisdom to be authentic and be the best they can be and they want to be, I really think it's amazing. So I wanted to bring that in front of you before I move to the next section.
Thank you.
So in the business world, I always feel there are three kinds of brands, one of many which we ignore, one of few which we notice and ignore, and then there's one of one. One of one has something unique, something really purposeful that creates a FOMO. I want to talk about William Espey, the personal brand. Okay. What is the one thing unique about William Espey? And I want to brag shamelessly about my friend that is unique, that most people or nobody else has. So when a brand or anybody talks to you, they leave with that FOMO that if I don't work with William, they'll miss that. That's their choice. But what is that one unique thing other than coming, of course, coming to my class and make them ignore my content? So
Well, I think that for me, uh, and what I can't seem to get over, for better or for worse, which is shaded by the idea of authenticity, is sort of an obsession with the objective truth, and looking for that core objective truth that everyone could be able to point to and say, yeah, that's the truth, and it's backed up by the facts that anyone can see around that, and that is part of building authenticity, or being an authentic person, or being an authentic brand. And I think that's one thing that I can't seem to overcome. If you, so I guess it's a good problem to have, is that I'm so fixated on that idea of truth. That is like, if someone was, if I'm to work with an organization, the first thing we're going to do is figure out, okay, what is the overarching truth that we're living under? That's not your truth, but it's a universal truth that applies to the situation. And likewise, how I look at what I do, and how I sort of what I'm doing now, is all based on that idea of seeking objective truth, and what are the facts, and what are the perceptions of our world and our reality that come out of rooting yourself in objective truth. Um, I hope that answers your question. It's rather
no, I think
out
that does. And I think the whole thing is connected because if you were talking about brands living in truth and you were not living that yourself, it does not connect. So I really feel the whole thing about how we connect the whole the circle of, at the core, you have to be truthful. Okay. And money talks. Like, I'll give you a very goofy example. During my corporate days, from Papa John's days, I got an offer to go to Anheuser-Busch and run marketing. I was excited. The money was amazing, opportunity was amazing, and I'm also looking at one of the next Super Bowl ads, everything else. But there was a tiny problem. I don't drink beer. I don't. And that's the part where last second I had to pull out, because I said, I cannot fake it. Like, I cannot rely on my team by saying, what do you guys think? And fake the fact that they all will know Arjun never drinks beer. And there's nothing right or wrong about it. That's my personal choice. I'm not blaming Anheuser-Busch. You want to sell beer, be truthful, sell beer. But don't sell beer without your heart being in it. And I really feel that lesson of truth, to me, I still regret not doing it. Okay, the money was huge. But on the other side, a part of me is so happy. Okay. I want to take the personal brand a step beyond. The world is changing so fast. How do you stay current? How do you make sure that you are not putting 2005's concepts in front and you are relevant to 2025? How do you do that?
I guess it's it's a manner of being aware, of just maintaining a sense of awareness of what's going on around us. Um, I mean, it's just, there's so much happening, so it's hard to sort of keep up. But there's part of you, I think, when you start working in this space, that you start seeing things that you didn't see before, and paying attention to little things that you didn't before. And it just becomes sort of second nature to absorb information, and to see, like, I saw that article several days ago about whoever it was, AT&T, or about the loyalty thing. It's like, oh, file that away. You're constantly, and it sort of builds on itself. So you have this you're sort of, I guess, in the flow. Part of the problem of that, I think, is that the current news cycle is just so oppressive, that it's hard to engage and not get emotionally worn down by what's you're kidding, this continuous onslaught. So picking out the bits that really make sense to you without being overwhelmed by the nonsense, is, I think there's a balance there. But we do that observational thing. I can't help it now, but having done this, I can't help but criticize ads and things I see in the world. So, because if I was doing that, I'm like, oh my God, I can't even read that headline. Why? Who sold you that idea? And then the other day, my kids or some my wife picked up a carton of milk at Safeway, and it's the branded organics from Safeway for their lactose free milk. And the color combination is just the worst thing in the world. And I couldn't help but like criticize this design. This is so bad that they're this red, and then they had this weird sort of magenta over the red that didn't work. And so I think what happens is you turn these things on in your head and you just can't turn them off. And so you just keep seeing the world and start analyzing, looking, understanding, picking up information, seeing more. But I think it's part of the process. You just sort of train yourself to continually be aware of what's happening around us.
What I'm hearing from you is you're keeping the doors and windows open. You're keeping yourself engaged, because always that way you're participating. Like to me, there was a phrase that you used to use when you came and did your presentation, that we are part of a revolution. Okay? Evolution is not fun. Revolution is fun. And I really feel that whole concept of you staying engaged and be part of the revolution is huge. So, William, has been a fun conversation. So, any final thoughts, questions you have, anything? This is the William Espey Show now.
No, that's not definitely not my show. It's yours. Any final thoughts? I think we really touched on a lot of these issues. I think that's, as again, my personal obsession, if you will, is and sort of the catchphrase I want people to walk away from with is to seek objective truth. And you seeking objective truth in the context of what we're talking about with branding and organizations, but then individually as well. If we were all able to focus on an idea of objective truth that we can all point to and say, yes, the sky is blue. Oh, we can all agree on that because there's obvious thing. We could get to a place of more agreement socially and personally and spiritually, if you will, if we were all grounding ourselves on objective truth above all else. So I guess that's sort of what I would like to leave as a parting. So much so that I'm actually working on a book that's focused on this. I was working with a publisher about a year ago. We met, and the idea was to write a book on building an authentic brand. But I felt that had been beat to death, and I've got a whole shelf full of books that I've never read on building authentic brands. It more or less is like, why create another one of those? But instead, I felt pushed, not so much inspired, but obliged to write something completely different that is focused on building an objective truth and about a spiritual path on how does one seek enlightenment, if you will, and an awakening in a world where most of the people you encounter just annoy the living hell out of you. And so how do you find that path, that balance between the two, between misanthropy and enlightenment? So
I
that's
love
kind
that.
of what.
Absolutely. And if I have a final piece of advice, as you were talking about your book, I have an alternate direction as a recommendation, suggestion to you. I think there's a book that only William Espey can write. And the book is Be and Live the Brand You Want to Be. Okay.
Mm.
And that to me is going back to the feedback from the student. Okay, after all these years, there's certain things you cannot fake. And I really think that's the power. As when I talk to you at Chipotle, I talk to a lot of people, all are cool people, but somehow I felt talking to you, I had a direct access to the heart of Chipotle. Okay. I also knew when you were not there anymore, I did not have an access to the heart. So I really feel that you being and living a brand is something that I would really request that when you write your book, put that in it, please, because at least to an audience of one, I want to know that, I want to read, and I want to know how you do that every day. So thank you, buddy. Appreciate our friendship.
You're
Appreciate
welcome. I appreciate you as well. It's been great knowing you all this time.
In my conversation with William Espey today, the thing that really hit me was this whole pursuit of truth. Those two words were very, very important to me. Brands, just like a relationship, to establish for long term, has to stay and connect to truth. Truth is very important because without truth, just in a relationship, you cannot be the authentic self. And to be the authentic self, you have to. And the second thing that is very important is pursuit. Brands are imperfect, just like human beings. The journey is very powerful. And then when you put the whole concept of the role of different individuals, the guest and the customer, that's the same thing. They're the guest. Concept of hospitality. You paid, and on this particular visit, I want to go all out to take care of you. And team members are partners. And I love the way William connected on how to take care of team members and do everything else. So a fascinating conversation about pursuit of truth.